introduction. Very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. It's truly an honor and pleasure to speak to you today. The topic of my discussion is perish or prosper for family businesses. It's a very important topic, especially in this region. If you look around the globe, I believe there are varying data, but 30 to 50% of businesses are owned by families. And in this region, if you take out the oil economy, it's roughly about 80%. And they provide more employment to more people. So most of what you hear, if you really think about it, is not necessarily applicable to the UAE because you have some very large established family businesses here that are really run very professionally and really are world class. But this is not the case throughout the globe. If you really look around, family businesses have a unique way and a unique character that are not necessarily fully conducive or aligned to business growth that you would expect. Of course, there are some world-class large corporations running families. And families and businesses are pretty much alike. You know, you have high emotions, happiness, occasional sadness, occasional quarrels, disagreements, excitement, all those wonderful things that families and businesses have are very common. But imagine when family and business come together, it's pretty explosive. And the word formality and structure is not something that most family businesses want to hear about. It's, very few companies take it public, and those who do it, they do a great job. So what I'm going to talk about, the very obvious, commonsensical approach, how do you thrive or perish or prosper? And first of all, I want to talk about the difference between large public companies and family businesses. I think some of it is very obvious, but some are very glaring and has impact for the survivability of the company. Does this work, guys? Murphy's Law is alive and well. Can you please? Is it frozen? While they are doing that, just, if you look at the SMB 500, there's been a study done over the last 50, 60 years. What they looked at is the lifespan of companies, ranging over the decades. What they found out was, about 50, 60 years ago, the average lifespan of a company, of an S&P 500 company, was around maybe 50, 60 years. Today, the last 20 years, the average lifespan of a company is about 20 years. So, as Ms. Albastiki mentioned earlier, you have to innovate and grow. Growth is fundamental to the survival of the business. So, here we go. And you can imagine the survivability of any business is not given. So most businesses perish. And you want family business to survive because they offer more employment to anybody than you can imagine. So what is one of the key differences that you have? Family businesses have a higher risk for shareholders and investors, generally speaking. And the reason for that is that because it's very close and obvious, you can imagine that the propensity for investors or lenders is very limited because you do not have the visibility that large public companies have. What this does, in essence, is to limit the growth opportunities for family business. So there's a huge opportunity there. And of course, the good news is that unlike large public companies with institutional investors, family businesses have aligned goals with management and shareholders. They do not think in the short terms, and they are not driven by, all the investment growth is not predicated on quarterly earnings or annual earnings. If you work for large institutional investors, the life cycle of top management is very limited. The stock options are vested maximum of 2 to 3 years for most people. And you can imagine that the way they approach the business is based on very short-term thinking. So the family business, of course, is very different from large public companies because the owners and the management are really aligned to the long-term growth of the business. But having said that, family business normally are run by personalities. The exception is some of the large family business that we have in the UAE. And of course, there are some world-class. But the majority of family business, there are certain personalities that run the company. And it's truly family business that makes the key decisions. So attracting world-class talent is really a challenge for family businesses, and which seems very obvious, but most people don't really think about it because people who work in large corporations really want to be in an environment where they can thrive and grow and, of course, make money and be really proud of something. And most people, do not end up lasting, working very long in family businesses. And of course, skeletons in the closet. There are deals or assets acquired or customers acquired that are connected to another family. There are a lot of skeletons in the closet. So all this contributes. There are a lot of differences between, I'm not suggesting that all family businesses. I'm saying in this part of the world, in the UAE especially, there are some world-class family businesses. But in most parts of the world, this is very, very true. There are skeletons in the closet. These are things that sort of minimize the capability of family businesses to really grow, to bring in capital and to grow, and invest. So what are the traps? There are 3 traps that family businesses have. First, you have the first generation coming, and there's always a place for you, for the favorite son. But the son might not have the son or daughter might not have the capability. So you can imagine the guy must have totally a different feel. He comes, runs the family business. That's the first trap that family businesses fall in. The second, of course, when it goes to the second generation, the business cannot grow fast. You cannot accommodate all the people that are coming, the other brothers and siblings that need to come in. What happens when it happens, the third trap sets in, which is that the silo mentality between families. The silo mentality of family members, the bloodline, maybe from the wives are, the brothers' wives and different families. And you can see it just happen in some great companies. For example, Reliance in India, of course, it's still both the brothers are doing fantastic, but you can clearly see they're a world-class large company, but it happens even in the largest companies. So imagine in the small companies, with all the emotions that families come together. So you have the differences between public companies and family businesses. You have these traps, which are all very obvious, very commonsensical when you look at it. But what is the thing that makes a family business thrive, to prosper? One of the key things, of course, before I say that, we all know, in fact, Paul and I were discussing before this presentation, and I was actually shocked to learn these are very obvious names that we all know. But Pfizer and, there are some of the largest businesses in the world are family-owned business because families have management control of this business. And I didn't know that Volkswagen was. Walmart, we all know the Walton family. It's a family-owned business. Christian Dior, we all know what it is. And ArcelorMittal is a steel company. In the last 15, 20 years, they've been acquiring steel plants all across the world. And Reliance, I just mentioned, is a very large oil and gas and telecommunications conglomerate in India. So you can imagine, what these companies are run well, but what do they have in common that makes them thrive or prosper? The first thing is, they have a unique value proposition and that is differentiated and profitable for the long term. It is not off-the-cuff, one-off stuff that they do that does not survive. Most family businesses, 50% of the family businesses do not survive to the second generations. These companies survive. They know that their business model is always looking at the growth. They understand that growth is a challenge. They invest in the right things to make sure that the growth continually happens. Or they diversify. And the other key things that most family businesses have, they invest in strategic marketing, in the propositions, in the products, in services that are required. They think that the proposition is the experience. It's not just the product. The end-to-end proposition is the experience, and the experience forms the brand. They are very acutely aware of this, and they keep investing because continual growth is important, because both the average lifespan of a large public company is also 20 years in the SMB 500. They know this, so the investment in strategic marketing goes beyond PR. It is the end-to-end proposition, from the product to the communication that happens, the strategic communication that need to happen, to actually the full distribution model that they need to know about. And of course, for the profitability, they need to look at the commercial model, and the pricing has to be right. So strategic marketing is very critical. If you take Walmart, for example, strategic marketing had a lot to do with it. Identifying the locations, he wanted scale. He went across to all the rural areas, but he managed to grow in such a way and still kept a chunk of the equity with the family, which is an amazing story. And this is very important. People matter. In every business, 10 to 20% of the people make a big difference. In family businesses, it's more so. In small and medium businesses, it's more so. Because these people have one difference. They have what we call high emotional intelligence. So make sure the three traps, you have the hair coming in, and then you have everybody else in the family wants to come in, and then you have all the silos. Just imagine a talented person won't come in. So you need to hire people with very high emotional intelligence and practical. That's what I call emotionally intelligent and practical candidates are required. Because in every business, whether it's large or small, 10 to 20% of the people create the incremental value of the company. Everybody in a business is important, but the guys who create the incremental value, growth, which is fundamental, whether you're private or public, these are the people that makes the difference. So you need to get people who have emotional intelligence attributes, like they have to be very practical, not whimsical or pie in the sky. They have to be assertive, positively. They should be able to talk to you in a way that you can buy it, you can accept it, but in a very positive way. They have to be very deliberate. They cannot be whimsical. They have to be flexible. Business is a whitewater environment. Things keep changing. Those are the type of people you need to hire. You don't want somebody who says, well, this is what we agreed last month and now we're going to change. Yes, tough luck, the business is tough. You got to keep changing. You need people who have high emotional awareness of themselves, who really know, what ticks them and what ticks them off, what ticks them up. People who are aware. Last but not least, you need people who are connected to all of us. We are all humans with empathy, who can put yourself in somebody's shoes. So other employees, don't ever forget, incompetent people are insecure, insecure people are ineffective. So from the family owner to his sons or anybody or the people you hire smart people, because it's really a vicious cycle. Good people leave. Most people leave their business because of the leaders and managers. Remember that. And last but not least, cash is king. And I don't have to say, it's very obvious. And actually, I've seen this in a few family businesses in my long career across different parts of the world, that people, when they think about the value of the company, they think of dilution of shareholding. But what they don't think is the probability of execution of the business without cash. So for example, you might have a huge business with 100 million potential, but the probability of execution is probably less than 5% without funds for growth. The expected value of that business is only 5 million. But if you have a business that's 30, 40 million with a high probability of execution and equity, the expected value is high. Most people lose it because emotion comes in and takes it. So on that note, what I just said, just want to recap, there are three traps that you've got to identify. We all know the obvious differences between public companies and large companies. We have to be aware of that every time. The second thing is avoid the three traps. We need to be very sensitive to those. The third thing that I talk about what makes them perish. What makes them perish is a sustainable commercial model, always keeping growth in mind, reinvesting for growth, not just generating your free cash flow and just putting it and giving dividends, because companies don't last that long. Invest in strategic marketing. Really invest in strategic marketing. Last but not, and thirdly, hire people who are highly emotionally intelligent, because 10 to 20% of the people make the biggest difference. Last but not least, whenever you get an opportunity, always remember cash is king. You never know when their friends, the banks or their lenders or their shareholders who are pumping in money might withdraw. So you need the cash. So on that note, thank you very much for your attention. It's been a pleasure speaking to you all.